What's up, guys? My name is DJ Swivel and you are in the mix, and today I'm going to be showing you how I mixed Magic Shop by BTS. But before we get started, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, leave a comment, do everything you got to do. Let's go.
DJ Swivel in the mix.
What's up, guys? My name is DJ Swivel and you are in the mix with me. Today we are going to go through one of my favorite songs that I've mixed. It's called Magic Shop by BTS, and this is actually a song that I co-wrote as well as mixed. It was produced by Jungkook from BTS, and yeah, we're gonna dive into the entire production, how this song was put together, how I mixed it, and yeah, just sort of give you guys a deep dive into how these songs get created. So, without further ado, let's dig right into it. The first thing I will show you guys is, first, I'm working in Pro Tools. And if you go here and check our system usage, we're using 200 voices, which means there is, each stereo track equals 2 voices, a mono track equals 1. So that means there's probably about, if I had to guess, 120 tracks. This is a pretty big session, all things considered. So, yeah, pretty large session. But we are going to break it all down and show you that just because the session is large, it doesn't have to be too complicated. And the key in that is organization. So why don't I just show you how I've organized this session and then how I went about starting the mix. So I like to organize things in a very specific way so that I can mix in that order, and I kind of work top down, right? So, and you'll notice I have over here, each set of tracks or group of tracks is color coordinated, and that's just so that I can find what I'm looking for a lot quicker. So first thing, and probably the most important in certainly hip hop and definitely a lot of pop music, is the kick drum. So we've got 6 kick drum tracks, and you'll also notice these files were delivered to me as stems, right? So there's a lot of empty audio here. That's because Jungkook and the Big Hit team deliver these to me as stems. This is called a stem. You'll notice some tracks, though, like these ones, are not stems. These were actually programmed, and that's because these are tracks that I added in the mix. So if I didn't, this is the chorus kick drum. I think I didn't feel like this sound really worked as well as it could, and so I matched the same programming, but I imported my own drum sounds that I felt like would, better deliver the message of the song. So you'll notice there's a few tracks that are like that, and we can sort of, we'll go through it all and explain why these things were added. So we've got 6 kick drum tracks. Then we get into our snares, claps, snaps, all of the primary accent drums, and it looks like we've got, I think, about 8 or 9. No, we've got 8 tracks here, and these are snares, claps, snaps, a bit of everything. And then we've got, next, we have our hi-hats. So we've got 5 hi-hat tracks, some open hi-hats, some closed hi-hats, some for the verse, some for the chorus. Then we've got a couple tom tracks. This is a tom fill that I think I added just going into the final chorus just to give the song a little lift. Then we have a drum break and a couple impact sounds. And then that's all of our drums, and then we get into our bass. So we've got 6 bass tracks here. They're all doing a little something different. And you'll notice, I have the bass colored in a dark brown color, and I always make my basses dark brown, and certain instruments very specific colors, because I have what is called synesthesia. I see color with sound. And so if certain sounds like basses have a particular color in my mind, if I color coordinate those tracks that way, it makes it even easier to find. And for some reason, basses have always felt like a dark brown color to me. Not gray, not black, not white, dark brown. That's bass for me. Okay, so moving on, we've got 2 acoustic guitar tracks here. With some, looks like some bypass automation on some of the plugins. I've always looked at acoustic guitars as yellow, so they are yellow. We've got 5 electric guitar tracks. They're bright red, energy, sort of, that's probably why my mind associates it that way. Piano I've always thought was blue. We've got a couple piano tracks. Then we have some synth and pad tracks. We've got 3 of those. And then we've got 4 tracks of, it's called Wind, but it's sort of like a synthetic flute sound. It's like a more ambient, ethereal flute sound. You'll hear it when we get to it. And then we've got 3 of the chorus synth tracks. This is the primary drop synth that happens in the chorus. And then we've got a couple vocal chop tracks. And then it looks like these are all sound effects tracks. So impacts, risers, downlifters, all these sorts of things. These are just common things in pop music production that, help make the user, or the listener rather, anticipate what's going to happen next. So we have risers that go into a chorus. Looks like we have a little drop here, anticipation, and then the downbeat here, and you have a downlifter that just helps like make that downbeat more impactful. And this is just very common stuff in pop music production. So that's all the track stuff. And then we go down here to the vocals. Now I've got all my vocals running through a single bus, but I've got other buses that are then running into this bus. So I don't normally do this. And if I check what's on it, yep, it's just something that's making the vocals a little brighter. So during the mix process, very likely this was a note. I don't remember all the notes that I got on this, but it's very typical when you mix a song, you deliver your best version of the mix, and then you'll get notes from the client. So whether it's the label or the artist or the producer, you will get some notes back. And so I'm guessing one of the notes was make the vocals a little bit brighter. And so rather than applying this plugin to every vocal track, it just makes more sense to run it all through a bus. I'm not doing any volume automation or anything. All I'm doing is adding a little bit of brightness. So that's just a convenience thing there. But anyway, so we have our all Vox bus, and then we get into our, similar to what we did on the beat, the most important parts of the vocal followed by the less important parts of the vocal. So obviously the most important part of a vocal is your lead vocal, right? So we have 7 tracks of lead vocals here. We've got a couple from Jungkook. We have a couple from Jimin. We have 1 from Jin. We've got 1 from V. So I'm sorry, yeah, we have 6 vocal tracks here. The automation window was throwing me off. So yeah, 6 lead vocal tracks. There is some lead vocal raps, but we're gonna get to that. Those come next. So then we have doubles of all these lead vocals, and it looks like these were all sung by Jungkook. And there's a couple ad-lib tracks down here as well. So those are sort of the secondary vocals. Then we get into the rap parts. So we've got 1 J-Hope track, we have 2 RM tracks, and we've got 3 Suga tracks. And these are lead vocals, and it looks like Suga's got a couple ad-libs here as well. And then we have some rap doubles. And, RM has his doubles, J-Hope has his doubles, and Suga's got a couple additional doubles down here as well. So that's all of our rap doubles, and then we get into some more background vocal tracks. Again, Jungkook sang all of these backgrounds here. It looks like, there's about 12 background vocal tracks. And then if we go further down, we have a bus of, 8 J-Hope background vocals. And then we have a gang vocal bus, and you can hear that at the end of the song especially, but we'll dig into that. There's 8 tracks of that. And then we have 8 tracks from Adora, a frequent BTS collaborator. After we get through all the background vocals, and you'll notice all these backgrounds then run through a bus. I always keep my buses above the background. Some people like to have it below, like down here. That just to me is a bit confusing. I like to have the bus first and then all the backgrounds that are within that bus below. Then we have our master fader with sort of the things that I do when I deliver a mix. And then below that, we have all of our effects returns. So we've got 4 reverbs. We've got 4 delays. Each one is doing a little something different. And then we have a slap delay and a doubler that are technically also delays, but these are more echo delays, and these are more very short delays that help create width and space and size in a vocal, for example. So that is the entire session. And why don't we just go back up to the top and work our way down, and let's just dig into each sound and see what is happening. So I think rather than me trying to play the whole song, first of all, you guys can listen to the song on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen to your music. But what I will do, just for context, is play sections of audio as I'm breaking down those sections, and that might be the best way to go about it. So let's start with sort of the intro and just see what's going on there. Okay, here we go.
망설인다는 걸 알아. 진심을 말해줘. 결국 다 흉터들로 돌아오니까 힘을 내란 뻔한 말은 하지 않을 거야. 난 내게 들려줄게.
So we've got two lead vocals, one from V and one from Jungkook, and then we've got some light drums. All right, so let's break it down. So we have one kick sound. Let's hear what that's doing. Okay, now let's bypass the plugins that I've got on it and just see what is being added, and then I'll dig into what those plugins are doing. Okay, so I bypassed it and we're gonna play it. This is just the raw sound. Now let's add. So a little punchier, a little more low end. What are we doing? All right, so we've got an EQ here that is heavily boosting some of the lows, actually by a lot. And then we have this air EQ, which is boosting some. It actually doesn't have a frequency. It has a built-in frequency, but it's just one of those things that adds like a nice little touch to it. Then we have this FG Bomber, which is sort of a compressor slash saturation. It's like a bit of both. And then we have this trimmer, which is just changing the volume. So let's go through and see what each thing is doing. So let's start with nothing is on now. I've turned all the elements off, so let's hear it. So because we're, all these sessions are using floating point now, there is really no zero. But you'll notice like I was slammed this EQ, so it was like actually distorting. But once you dial everything back, you'll notice on this bomber, I pulled it back by about 7.5, 8 dB, and then pulled it back another 6 dB here. It all sounded great in the end. But that was really just to get as much low end as possible out of it, because I felt like there wasn't much low end there. Okay, so moving on. We also have a snap sound, and this I've actually done nothing to it. Sounded perfect. So let's hear those together. Feels good to me. Let's continue on. Okay, let's close that. What else do we have going on? We've got these intro guitar sounds, so let's hear that. All right, what are these doing? Well, let's hear what each one is doing first. So the first one. And the second one. So slightly different characteristics, but kind of complementing one another, doing the same thing. What effects do we have on it? So we have Renaissance Axe from Waves and a Valhalla Vintage Verb. I love this reverb. It sounds great. Let's hear what it sounds like with nothing. That reverb adds some nice space, and Renaissance Axe is probably just getting a little bit of compression and bringing the guitar to the forefront a bit more. About 3 dB of compression. Let's see what the next track is doing. So we're filtering out some of those lows. So let's turn that back on. And boosting some brightness to it. And then we're adding a little bit of compression here. And that just helps bring it to the forefront. Okay, moving on. We also have this pad sound, which again has nothing happening to it. Okay, let's hear it. So you can tell they've done some processing to it. There is sort of an LFO happening. It's got a, you know, it's probably some sort of sidechain LFO effect that they've got on it, and it gives it that sort of like wobbling effect. But it's in time with the beat. So yeah, that was definitely intentional. And then what else do we have? We have this wind sound here. Fairly simple effect. Again, nothing on it. It sounded great as is. And then we have these sound effect sounds here. Again, nothing on those. And we have a vocal chop with nothing on that. Part of the key of mixing is knowing when to do something and when not to. And so that's key. If something sounds good, you shouldn't feel like you have to go and do something to it. But let's hear what these things are doing. Sounds really cool. And let's hear what these intro sounds are doing. So let's break that down. There is a cymbal, I think. A reverse cymbal. And then kind of like a vocal chop thing. And I think what is another vocal chop thing. So that's what we've got there. And then we have our lead vocals. Why don't we dig into, you know, let's save the vocals. Let's save the vocals for later because I want to really break down what's happening in the track, and then we'll get into the vocals because there's a lot more processing happening on the vocals and a lot of different things. So anyways, that's the intro. Let's see what happens in the next section here. Okay?
난 내게 들려줄게
내가 뭐랬어 이길 거랬잖아 믿지 못했어 이길 수 있을까 이 기적 아닌 기적을 우리가 만든 걸까 난 여기 있었고 네가 내게 다가와 준 거야 I do believe your galaxy 듣고 싶은 너의 멜로디 널 은하수의 별들은 너의 하늘이 과연 어떻게 숨을지 날 절망 끝에 결국 내가 널 찾았음을 잊지 마넌 절벽 끝에 서있던 내 마지막 이유야 Live
내가 남기신
All right, so that's RM's verse. Let's hear what's happening in the track. Okay, so we have another kick drum. Let's hear it without plugins. And now I'll add halfway through. So a lot punchier, a lot brighter, and that helps just cut through a mix. So what are we doing? The first thing we're doing is, this is just a simple channel strip, a bit of compression. Let's see how much. About 6 dB of compression, boosting a lot of 8K, a lot of 1.5K, and boosting a little bit around 100 hertz on a bell curve. So that's what's happening on that. And then we have this R bass, which is just boosting some subharmonic stuff and around 60 hertz. Very light amount, but it adds like a little bit of boominess to it. So you'll hear I'll bypass that. So on a big sub, you're going to hear a little bit of that. All right, so moving on. Then we have the verse snare. And let's see what that's doing. Let's hear it without plugins. And then I'll add it halfway through. So it looks like we're adding some EQ and some reverb. So what do we have? A very light amount of compression, not much at all. In fact, yeah, very subtle. It might only be getting 1 or 2 dB of compression. It's not even enough to hit the 3 dB mark. There's a little bit of boost around, what are we at? 930 hertz. And that's it there. And then we have a reverb. We have a plate reverb. All of the reverbs I add to a track, like a musical track, I add directly on the track. All of my reverbs down here, I save these, it's a big session. All of these reverbs down here are my global, these are essentially all my vocal effects, really. So anyways, we've got, that little reverb, and that's what that just adds a little space to that verse snare. Then we have an accent verse snare, which comes in just in certain parts. So, and I've got nothing on that. Didn't need anything. It felt good. All right, what else do we have? More of the drums come in this section. So let's see. We've got an open hi-hat and 2 other hi-hats. And again, no effects on them at all. They sounded good. Let's hear them together in context. So you can hear what each one of them is doing. And it looks like just at the end here, I did a little drop so that going into that pre-chorus, it would have more, I don't know, more anticipation going into it. Let's hear what this drop is adding. Yeah, it's nice. It just adds a little bit of space so that when all this big background vocal section comes in, you just have a little bit of breathing room before that comes in. A lot of mixing is just knowing when something should be there, when something should not be there. And yeah, that's just one of those creative choices that was made during the mix. Okay, and we have a drum break. Let's hear what this drum break is doing. Okay. Oh, this is a very large session, so we may have a couple of these like playback errors where it just stops playing. What's happening in the drum break? All right, well, let's bypass this first, and then I'll add it halfway through. It's subtle. It's adding a little bit of low end, just a tiny bit of saturation, but again, very, very subtle, just helping shape the sound. Mixing to me is a lot of very small brush strokes, not, very few large brush strokes. The producers have already put together a song that sounds great. My job is just to, do all the little tiny tweaks and adjustments to help just bring that song to life and make it sound as good as it can possibly sound. And so, yeah, this is a good example of that. There's a lot going on, but when you listen to the end result, it's very subtle. Okay, moving on. We have those intro guitars. They continue, although I have actually done some automation on them. So you'll see this is the volume line here. So in the intro, they're at, -7.5 0.1 dB, and then they go up to minus 6.6. So I raise them a half dB in this section, really just so that, you know, a mix is, you know, a great song tells a story, and you want, you know, there's got to be peaks and valleys, and you want that song to grow. So even though that half dB is very subtle, you're going to feel it. And so the guitar just gets very slightly louder just in that section, and it remains at that volume for the rest of the song in any instance where the song comes in. But for that intro, it was lots of space, didn't need to be as loud. Okay, so let's see what else. We've also got a piano, and you'll see there's some mute automation on this piano, and the reason for that is probably one of these sounds is adding some sort of noise. Yeah, I think this is adding a little bit of noise, low-level noise, and so that's fine on one track, but if you have 20 tracks in a session that are all adding a little bit of low-level noise, then the noise gets really loud. So I think that's what was happening in this, and so I just automated, you know, automated the mute on it so that it would open up just when it's playing. Anyways, let's hear that piano. So I like this plugin. I'm not actually sure what it does, but as you move this value to the right, clockwise, it gets a little brighter. It just sort of opens up a piano. I think it might be doing some stereo stuff as well. And then what else? I'm filtering out a bunch of the low end. I felt like the piano was a little too boomy, and there's other sounds that are occupying that space. And then a bit of compression. But other than that, no EQ, just some filtering and some compression. Okay, so that's all we got on the piano. Then again, we have that pad, and you'll notice just like I raised these guitars a half dB, I actually raised this pad 2 dB just for this section. I'm using in Pro Tools what's called clip gain automation. So I'm just raising and lowering the clips. So you'll see that. So you'll see it says plus 2 dB there, which means this is just 2 dB louder. Okay, and then we've got more of these wind sounds come in and more prominently. So let's hear what these are doing. Okay, idea. So sounds of them has a SSL channel on it. Yep, just filtering out some low end up to about 250. What's that? 263, and taking out a little bit of like boxiness around 500 hertz here, and there's a bit of compression going on as well. So that's just helping tame the louder parts and you know, increase the volume of some of the softer parts there. All right, so that's all we got there. And then, you know, there's some basic sound effects that come and go throughout the song. I don't think I'm going to spend a whole lot of time on these. I might just, you know, around this section, just solo the whole group. But basically, these are, again, just little sound effects. And most of them you'll see have no processing. Some of them do. Again, this is just filtering out some low end and probably the same. No, this is just making something a little brighter and adding a little compression. But for the most part, these sounds usually sound fine. So anyways, let's move on. Again, I will dig into all the vocals afterwards. All right, so the next section, the pre-chorus. So what happens? Let's hear coming out of the RM's verse, what happens in the pre-chorus.
So
I think we're going to do here is take off on the fader. Let's take these two things off and see if that helps. And if not, we may have to do some freeze tracks. This is sort of especially on a session this large. This is just kind of normal. I'm also probably due to get a new new computer system in here. But either way, let's see if that helps.
이유야 live
내가 난게 싫은 날 영영 사라지고 싶은 날 문을 하나 만들자 너의 맘속에 닿게 문을 열고 들어가면 이곳이 기다릴 거야 믿어도 괜찮아 널 위로해줄 magic shot.
Sounds great. Okay. So what are we doing? Well, you'll notice there's not much drums in this section, but in the second half, we have a kick that comes in. Let's hear that with and without. So that's just adding a little bit of compression, just making it punch through a little bit more and actually filtering out some of the lows. Very, very subtle. And then we have this pre-snare roll. What's it doing? Okay, so a lot of the processing was done to this before it ever got to me. So you'll notice it's low pass about up to here, and then that filter opens up and it gets brighter, 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 brighter. And then in the last, bar or so here, it sounds like that snare is actually just getting pitched up. And this is like, again, a very common thing that helps, you're going into the chorus. So you want that energy to build, 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 build. And then you have a little break, let the listener breathe. And then the downbeat comes. And then that's like the big climactic moment of a song. This is just sort of very standard, pop production techniques that are, you'll hear this in a ton of songs. But what's happening on the snare, just adding a little bit of brightness. That's about it. Not much going on. Okay, moving on. This section, we still have the impact sounds, we haven't really gone through those, but they're just doing like a simple hit. We'll just play those back. So there's a high one here and then a low one here. This purple one. Okay. And on the low one, I think, what am I doing here? Yeah, just a little compression so that the transients of them hit just a little bit harder, but not much going on. So we have the impact sounds, and then where there's a ton going on is in the bass section. So what do we have? We have actually 1, 2, 3, 4 basses playing at once. This normally I would say is a big no-no, but all of these are doing a little something different. So let's just see what they're doing. The first one is, this is a live bass, and this is the main primary bass. Let's hear it. Okay, so you'll notice the bass gets a little brighter as it goes, but what are we doing on it? We have some like high and low sort of harmonic lifting. This is just like a basic, EQ. There's a bit of compression, a little more EQ. This is more carving EQ. And then there's some saturation, just giving it a little grit, and then a little bit more bottom at the end. And then we follow that up with a CLA bass, which has a little bit of distortion on it, and there's a little bit of stereo chorusing happening, and then I'm guessing this is just like a final EQ. And actually, it looks like I'm automating the low end on this. So let's hear. Oh, no, that gets automated later on in the session. So not super important there, but let's hear what it sounds like with nothing, and then and then I'll add everything back in. Now, you'll notice I filtered out almost all the low end from the bass. You're not hearing anything below 273 hertz. And there's a reason for that, because there's 4 basses playing. So I didn't feel like this was the sound that needed to represent the low frequencies. I felt this was more about the mid-range and it's a live bass, so some of the fret noise and the organic sound of it was more important. But one of these, I'm guessing it's the third one, is occupying most of the low end. But let's hear the rest. So we have this one. You'll notice building into that chorus, you'll see like this bass gets louder. It starts quiet and it gets louder as it goes. And again, this is all about building up towards this like climax moment. All right. Let's see what this bass is doing. Adding some dynamics, it's getting louder, but again, I filtered out everything below 179 hertz. So that's not occupying the low. So this is what I suspect is though. Oh, in fact, this one is not either. This is also filtered out to almost 200 hertz. Let's hear what this one's doing. So again, a filter is opening up, and I think that's happening on all of them. And again, it's just like helping train the ear to know, oh, something big is coming. And of course, that's the chorus. All right, now this is the final bass. I suspect this has most of the low end in it. Yep, I haven't filtered anything out of this. And in fact, I've boosted the low end on it. Let's hear what this one's doing. One thing before I play it, you'll notice I have done a fade minus 14. Sorry, basically what I did here is I wanted this to fade in, but rather than automating it, I did, I'll just do it over here. Like you create a break and then you might lower one and then you just do a crossfade and it's going to fade it down if I want it to get quieter there, but I don't. So what I did is I basically chopped the first half of this, lowered it 14 decibels, and then did a long crossfade. So it starts at minus 14 and then it gradually gets louder, 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 louder until it gets 14 dB louder and then it's at 0. So that was done essentially to so that it matches the dynamics of the other basses that are happening. But let's hear what it's doing. So that's got a really nice smooth low end, and it's been boosted a lot, around 60 hertz, I'm guessing. Yep. And yeah, that's occupying the low frequencies in the bass there. Okay. What other things do we have? We have this same pad that's been throughout the song, but it's actually quieter, minus 3 dB, because I felt like there's more important sounds to introduce. Let's hear it though. Okay. Again, that had no effects on it. Then we have a pre-hook pad. So this is doing just subtle stuff, adding a little bit of stereo image and making it a little bit brighter, around 10K. But again, not too much. Then we have this another pre-hook synth. What's that doing? So I've made it a lot brighter. I don't know if you could hear me A-Bing throughout, but I've definitely made it a lot brighter. There's some 8K happening. There's some 4K roughly happening. a little boost there. And then also the 10K I've boosted like to the max and a lot wider as well. So, and again, the filter was built into the stem. So that was done in the production process before the files ever got to me. So you hear sort of the brightness gets brighter, brighter, brighter as it goes. Again, leading the listener into this big chorus. And then we have these wind sounds, which we've already heard, although there is one additional one here. Let's hear what it's doing. So it's kind of, it's just some sort of flute, and it's a little bit brighter. Again, we're lifting into that chorus. We want to start adding sounds and stacking and creating that anticipation. All right. And then we've got a couple sound effects, and we have this riser leading into the chorus. Let's, as I said, I would just solo all of these together. Let's hear what they're doing. So lots of energy buildup, right? You're hearing these get louder, brighter, faster, and then it stops, dead silence, and then the downbeat happens. Again, a very common trick in pop music production. Okay, so moving on to the chorus, and then after the chorus, I think we will jump down to the vocals. Okay. I'll listen to some of the bridge stuff in the, any additional sounds, and then we'll get into the vocals. All right, so chorus. What's happening? Well, a lot more, but let's play it back, and then I'll dig into the sounds, okay? Cool. Love that chorus. And actually the show me, I show you, that's actually a lyric that I sort of came up with in the writing process. So yeah, love that. Okay, so what do we have? We have 3 kicks, and you'll notice 2 of these are kicks that I've added. It says Swiv kick 1 and 2. So let's hear, this was the kick that they gave me initially, and I'll play it with nothing on it, and then you'll hear what I did to make it work with my kick. All right, so it sounds cool, but I really don't love that kick sound personally. It's just a taste thing. So what did I do to it? So I filtered out all of the low end, just using a simple EQ. Yeah, just filtered out all of the low end so that you're only hearing the high frequencies. And what you are getting from it is the attack of the kick, so it punches through. But now let's hear what kicks I decided to pull in. So I pulled this one in. To me, that just hits harder. It's more impactful. It doesn't kind of wobble the way that the first kick does. And collectively, these three together really work well. So what am I doing on my kick? Well, let's hear what it sounds like with nothing. It already sounds pretty good. The key in picking drums is about pick a good sound. Don't pick the first sound. Take your time and find the best possible kick so that you don't have to do a bunch of changes. So I like that kick sound. What did I do to it? All right, so I've got a little bit more brightness happening, and I'm cutting out just some of the boxiness in around 500 hertz. Is it? No, 380 hertz. And then here, I'm just adding a little bit of transient, attack to it. So I'll add the plugins about a bar into it. right? So taking out some of that low mid, sucking that out, makes it less boomy. And then we get more low end on this last one here. So cool. So together, these work really well. So this one's basically just low end. And then we add the original kick that was provided to me for just some of that brightness and the attack sound. Okay, cool. We spent enough time on the kicks. Let's move on. So we've got a couple snares and claps. Let's hear the combination of them. Okay, so one is a snare comp. Oh, looks like we had a group on. So let me take these groups off so that we can hear everything. All right, so here's the first one. What am I doing to this? Okay, so nothing is actually happening, but I suspect this is automated. So let's see. Yeah, just automating this like later in the song. And that's like leaving a chorus going into, I'm guessing, the bridge here. Yeah, it looks like it. And that's just another trick to just, oh, we're going into a bridge. We want to dial it back a little bit. So, we just do a little filter on this at the end so that it feels less bright. But anyways, so we've got that one sound. Then we have this one. And what are we doing here? Just filtering out some low and taking out some boxiness. And we add that clap. What are we doing there? Just adding a little bit of brightness and a little compression. So we're adding, a little 8K and then just compressing a bit here. And then we have the other hook clap. So we have some stereo imaging happening. This was before I released my plugin Spread when I mixed it, but normally now I would probably use my plugin Spread, and that would essentially do the same thing. We can sort of show that off for a second here. But effectively, these kind of do the same thing, although Spread is multiband. So that's like the equivalent of doing that on this Waves one. But anyways, for the sake of this demonstration, we're using the Waves one. And I filtered out all the low end, made it a little bit brighter, and there's some compression happening. So combined, I'll just sort of add one by one as we go. Okay. And there's your main clap snare sound in the chorus. Okay, moving on. We've got some hi-hats here. Not much is happening on these hi-hats. Filtering out some low end, making them a little brighter, adding a little compression. Nothing crazy, but we'll just hear them all in context so we can get this show on the road. So there's 4 hi-hats happening, but they're all kind of complementing one another, and they just feel like a nice hi-hat group. Okay, what else? We have one main hook bass. Let's hear what that's doing. So we're filtering out some of the high, and then we are side chaining it to the kick drum. So we have this compressor that is looking for input from key 1, and key 1 is the main kick drum in the chorus right here. So this is looking for key 1, and let me just remove that. And this is being sent to key 1, swiv kick, right? And so that gets sent, and then every time this kick hits, this bass will duck. It will duck itself. So, and you'll see, watch. Now, the reason we do that is to make space for the kick drum. When there's a lot of things happening, synths and basses and whatever, especially in EDM music, you want your drums to cut through, and they can get lost when there's all these other sounds. So we make sure that that kick is triggering a compressor. So every time that kick hits, everything else gets lower. So it makes room for the kick, but it comes right back in very quickly. Okay, so that's what's happening on the bass. And then, yeah, we have a couple of the wind sounds, which we've already heard, but let's focus on the main hook synths. So I'll add one at a time. So I'll solo one, then add the second, then add the third, and then we'll see what they're all doing, okay? Cool. Let's hear what each one is. And again, the first one. Cool. So they sound pretty good. What are we doing on them? All right, this one's just a little bit brighter using the stereo expander on the vitalizer here. And it looks like there's a little bit of EQ stuff happening down here. And then the second one, this just has a sidechain compressor on it. So again, being triggered by the kick, you'll see what's happening. And it's only pulling out 6 dB, and in context, it's not a lot, but it's enough for the kick to be able to cut through and not have these other things in its way. And I suspect this last one is doing the same, filtering out some lows, and again, sidechain. And then all of that runs through a bus, which there's a little bit of stereo expansion happening, and then a little bit of brightness, and yeah, a little more brightness here. So why don't I just play them all, and I'll bypass the main bus. So much brighter, much richer, more aggressive, and that was sort of the goal. So that's the main hook synth, and then of course we have these impact sounds, all good. All right, beyond that, let's see if there's other sounds that I haven't dug into, and then let's focus on the vocals, okay? So, yeah, there's this acoustic guitar, which I didn't really address. Let's see what it's doing. This is in the pre. So you'll notice I thinned it out. And the reason I thinned it out is because it had a lot of low end in it, which is fine. If it was by itself, that would have sounded great. But we had like 4 basses playing at the same time that are all occupying some of those frequencies. So really the guitar didn't need it. It just needed to sit on top of these basses and be a little brighter. So that's why I made that decision. Again, the mute bypass opens up here, and that's because, you know, this plugin here adds some noise to it. And, you know, I didn't want that noise being built up throughout the whole song. So, okay, so that's that acoustic guitar. There's another good acoustic guitar at the end here, which is doing something similar, although it has an added compressor. That's in the bridge. So very similar, made it brighter. And let's hear how that complements with these electric guitar sounds here. Let's solo all of these electric guitars. Well, really just the 3 of them. All right, so this is in the bridge. Why don't I play the bridge, and then I'll dig into the bridge sounds here.
찾아낸 이곳에 너의 은하수에 너의 마음속에
the vocal chop comes in and we get into that final chorus. All right. So what's happening? We have this this electric guitar, and then it plays something else here. Okay, and then we have another one. So that's like a slide guitar, which I love that sound. And then we have a third guitar, and this is the one that like builds up. It's got some low end in it. You know, I'm not doing too much to it. There's only one live bass happening here, which is filtered out. So this is almost acting like a bass in a way, but it is an electric guitar, so I have it in a different section of the mix. And that's all complemented with this acoustic and the piano. So why don't I play, well, you guys get what's happening there. Let me play the piano, the bridge, and then I'll play all those instruments together. So this really emotional piano comes in here, and then we have this bridge arp. Let's hear what that's doing. So again, you'll notice every track, they all work well together, but they're all kind of doing something to contribute to this lift at the end of the bridge. And that's really, really important. That's great production, you know, just a really good production ear to know, all right, we want it to go into the chorus. Let's make sure all these sounds are either a filter is opening up or they get brighter or they get louder or they get faster. Like these are all things, these are all characteristics of sound that make us feel like something is about to happen. So very good production happening there. Okay. What else do we have? We have these pads. I think I've already dug into this. Yeah, we've heard that, the wind sounds. All right, so we know what that all is. And then I think the last things that I haven't gone over is like the vocal chop. This is just a simple vocal chop at the end. Let's hear what it's doing. Okay, so we have just some multi-band compression happening. I think there was some frequencies that were a little irritating that I needed to sort of tame. So that's happening there. Then we've got some a ton of reverb on it, and the sidechain is also working with that. So you'll hear when the kick hits, you're not going to hear the kick, but you'll see it here. The sidechain will duck that vocal to make room for the drums. So that's with no plugins. And again, I'll do it one more time. No plugins, and then I'll add it halfway through. Cool. So sounds good. All right. So that's pretty much all of the musical elements. So let's focus on the vocals now and try to dig into those. All right. So I'm not going to go into every single vocal track because we'll be here forever. But I do want to show you kind of what is happening and why. So again, I mentioned earlier, all the vocals are running through this bus, which is brightening it up. That was just from a mix note. Make the vocals a little brighter. That was an easy way to do that. So let's get past that and hear what's going on in a typical vocal. I'll I'll show you what I'm doing on Jungkook and V, and then I'll show you what I'm doing on RM, and you'll get an idea of how I like to process singing vocals versus rap vocals. Okay, so on V's vocal here, what do we have? So let me take all of the effects off and hear what it sounds like.
망설인다는 걸 알아. 진심을 말해줘.
Now there's automation on this delay, that's why it didn't bypass, but let's put it all back on and now hear it.
망설인다는 걸 알아. 진심을 말해줘.
So there's really nothing complex happening here. A little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression. Very, very standard stuff. Then we have a de-esser happening after the fact, and that's just taming some of our sibilants, some of the S sounds. And then as far as reverbs and delays, we've got a doubler happening. We have a bit of slap delay. We have a bit of quarter note long delay. And then we have this very bright reverb, our C reverb, and our A reverb is like our hall. So let's like quickly go through those. The A reverb is just a simple hall. It's got a 1.7 second decay time. Then our B reverb is a plate. It's got a longer decay time, 3 seconds, but it's a brighter reverb. And then this is the brightest reverb, and it's got a 3.5 second decay. This is it's like just brightness. It's just a little bit of sizzle. And then this is a room, which I would typically use on the rap vocals. So, okay. And then as far as the delays, we were using the long delay, just a simple quarter note delay. I'm filtering out down to 3K on the output, and I'm getting rid of everything below 364 hertz also. So you get almost like a radio effect kind of, but not so pronounced. So why don't we hear what that delay is doing? So just listen for the echo, okay?
망설인다는 걸 알아. 진심을 말해줘. 결국 다 흉터들로 돌아오니까.
So that's really how I process vocals. And the key to getting a really good vocal performance is making sure the level of everything is good. So if I make this a little bit bigger here, you'll notice there's clip gain automation on all of these parts, right? This is minus 4.5 dB, minus 2 dB, plus 2 dB, plus 1.5 dB. The purpose of this, and you'll notice this is on every single lead vocal track. Every single one I go through. This literally is the longest thing in a mix. For me to go through and manually adjust syllable by syllable every single vocal by far takes the most time in a mix, but by far is the most important. If you want a really good present in-your-face lead vocal, you have to do this. You have to go through this step and make sure every single vocal is leveled out exactly the way that you want. Okay, so moving on. There is some automation on this V track, where I'm just like adding this additional EQ later on. I think in this section here, yep, it opens up here. Oh, sorry, it opens up actually after the verse. And that's just because these other vocals felt like once the mix was built up, they were a little quiet and needed to be a little brighter to cut through. So I just boosted about 3 dB, 2.5 dB at 8K and automated that so it's only on these. But then it actually is not on this this I think bridge vocal here. So all right, so that's like how I process a lead vocal. Let's see what Jungkook is doing.
힘을 내 한 번의 말은 하지 않을 거야. 난 내게 들려줄게.
So similar effects. The processing might be slightly different, but for the most part, we're gonna have some EQ, some compression on here. Yep, little bit of EQ, little bit of compression. This is just a preamp that adds a little bit of saturation, but very little. And that is sort of bringing the vocal to life. And then we have this de-esser that is just dealing with some of the sibilants, some of the S sounds that come in. So again, I'll take off the plugins and then I'll just play like a bar without and then a bar with.
힘을 내 한 번의 말 하지 않을 거야. 난 내게 들려줄게, 들려줄게.
So yeah, just brings that vocal to the forefront, and that's sort of very typical of all of these vocals. So I'm not going to go through every single one. All right, moving on. The background vocals, how are we processing those? Well, first things first, you know, a lot of time is spent like lining vocals up. So Jungkook has this stereo group, and you'll notice is panned 100% left and 100% right. So let's hear what they're doing.
내가 나에게 싫은 날 영영 사라지고 싶은 날.
So that's two separate vocals panned hard left and right, and then we have a vocal here in the center. Let's hear what that does. I'll add it about a couple seconds in.
내가 나에게 싫은 날 영영 사라지고 싶은 날 문을 하나 만들자 너의 맘속에 다.
So Jin is performing the lead, but Jungkook has sort of his own lead underneath that's really there to just support it underneath. And then, of course, there's the left and right hard panned other backgrounds there. And all these edits on this Jungkook sort of center background, this is all done to make sure it does not interfere with Jin's. So a lot of this is like, you know, it might be nudging things over a little bit. It might be just adjusting volume if Jungkook gets a little loud and it pokes through and interferes and gets in the way of Jin. We want to make sure, you know, Jin has his space to shine there. And yeah, so all of these sort of like lead doubles are edited to work perfectly with, like, in this case, Jimin's section, and then in this case, actually even edited to work with Jungkook. Like Jungkook has a lead here, but if this one is like too different, meaning like certain sounds are not lining up with one another, the transients aren't lining up with one another, we want to make sure that we go through and edit this so that it fits perfectly in sync, so that's not getting in the way and fighting with this lead vocal at all. It's working with it. So that's another sort of common thing that I do. So that's what these backgrounds are doing. Why don't I just sort of play this section into the next section, just so you can kind of hear what the backgrounds are doing.
거야 믿어도 괜찮아 널 위로해줄 magic shot 따뜻한 찬잔을 마시며 저 은하수를
Cool. So you hear what it's doing. And just at the end there, I added the lead vocal. Let me play it one more time, coming out of Jimin into Jungkook with the leads.
널 위로해줄 magic shot 따뜻한 찬잔을 마시며 저 은하수를 올라타보며.
So it feels nice and big, and that's what we want out of a chorus. So I love that. Okay, moving on. Let's go to the rap lead vocals. Again, similar thing. I'll just show you kind of how I generally process rap stuff. Again, same as on the singing vocals, every single syllable here is adjusted for volume. So plus 2.5 dB. That's at 0. This is at -2. This is +2. And as we go, plus almost 3, -1, you know, plus almost 1. The goal here is, again, just make sure every single syllable hits at the exact correct volume. And it doesn't mean that they all have to hit at the exact same volume, because you want to listen. When I'm doing this, I do it while I'm listening to the track. And so if something loud happens in the track, I might have to turn a syllable way up so that it feels the same volume against the track. That's one mistake that a lot of people make. They think the vocals got to be the same volume all the way through. No, it has to sound like the same volume, the same apparent volume, but that is relative to what is happening in the track. If the track gets quieter, these vocals are probably going to get a little quieter. If the track gets louder, you're going to need to make those vocals louder so they feel like they are weighted the same. So anyways, that's how I would first process the vocals. And then what do we have going on? We have some de-essing happening, which is just, you know, taking out some of the sibilants. We're brightening it up a bit, taking out some low end, some basic compression. We have a second compressor, so they're both doing some subtle amounts of compression. Then we have another de-esser, but this is not doing the S's. This is more the upper mids, like 3,800 hertz in this case. A lot of female vocalists need a second de-esser or multiband compressor at the end and take out somewhere between 2K and 4K is usually the sweet spot. But that is a frequency that can tend to really like be harsh on the ear and give your ear fatigue, especially if you're listening loud. And so we want to tame that so that you don't get tired of listening to the song. And then finally, there's a bit of brightness on the EQ there at the end. I suspect that was from a note. Okay, so let's hear that with, and then we have, sorry, just the D reverb, which is a room. We have a medium delay. And so let's take everything off and then I'll add, I'll add all this stuff and then I'll add the you know, time-based effects.
내가 뭐랬어 이길 거랬잖아 믿지 못했어 이길 수 있을까 이 기적 아닌 기적을 우리가 만든 걸까 난 여기 있었고 네가 내게 다가와 준 거야
So once again.
내가 뭐랬어 이길 거랬잖아 믿지 못했어 이길 수 있을까
All right, cool. So we bring that out to the forefront. Now let's hear what these effects are doing. So I'll start with the doubler.
내가 뭐랬어 이길 거랬잖아 믿지 못했어 이길 수 있을까 이 기적 아닌 기적을 우리가 만든 걸까 난 여기 있었고 네가 내게 다가와 준 거야 내가 뭐랬어 이길 거랬잖아 믿지 못했어 이길 수 있을까 이 기적 아닌 기적을 우리가 만든 걸까
So that's actually kind of a big room for a rap vocal, but that's kind of what was needed in context of the song. So I suspect, yeah, the second RM track is processed probably identically. Obviously, it's the same voice, so we want to process it the same. You know, J-Hope has a little bit different processing, but for the most part, the individual EQ might be a little bit different, but the thought process behind it is the same. So yeah, a little bit of EQ difference there, pulling out some 2100 hertz. And we're actually using a different reverb on J-Hope. So let's hear what that's doing.
별된 장미꽃처럼 날리던 벚꽃처럼.
So that's not really a rap. So it's like sort of a bigger plate reverb on that. Okay. And then Suga, I use a different set of processing tools, but again, same thing. I just felt like these plugins sounded better on him. But I'm using some saturation, some EQ, some 2 different compressors, and a little bit more EQ at the end. Again, very, very sort of common vocal processing. Okay, moving on. The doubles. These are processed, you know, similar to how I do a lot of vocal buses, de-esser, EQ, compression, another compressor. Then this is adding a little bit of like high-end saturation and brightness. And then again, just taming some of that 3,600 hertz was sort of like irritating a bit. And then rather than manually doing vocal rides for each background track, they're just panned hard left and right. And then I just manually ride the bus. So this is me just automating the this is volume here, right? So this is me just automating the volume depending on which lines come in, how loud they should be in context, and same over here. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Let's close that down and move down. All right, so now we have these Jungkook backgrounds. Again, I'm not going to go through all of this because it's largely the same. You know, similar chain of effects. Each one might be a little bit different. And then there's vocal rides throughout. All this automation here is making sure that each syllable is the exact volume it should be. So let me just play one of these stacks here. Like maybe let me play this section going into this so you can hear kind of what these backgrounds are doing.
위로와 감동이 되고 싶었었던 나 그대의 슬픔 아픔 걷어가고 싶은 나 내가 날기 싫은 날 영영 사라지고 싶은 날.
So there's actually some really beautiful harmonies going on. Why don't I just quickly play what these harmonies are doing. So this first set of harmonies.
위로와 감동이 되고 싶었었던 나.
Second one.
되고 싶었었던 나
All right, so third one.
위로와 감동이 되고 싶었었던 나
And the fourth one.
위로와 감동이 되고 싶었었던 나
And together, they glue together and just sound beautiful.
위로와 감동이 되고 싶었었던 나
Love that. Like that is incredible vocal production right there. So good job for whoever. I didn't cut the boys on this, so good job to whoever was working with them on the vocal production. Okay. So yeah, so that's largely the backgrounds there. Then J-Hope's got a group of backgrounds. Let's hear what he's doing.
위로와 감동이 되고 싶었었던 나 그대의 슬픔 아픔 걷어가고 싶었나
So that's representing some of the lower frequencies, some of the lower stuff. So that sounds great also. And then we have this gang vocal bus. So let's hear what this is doing. This is sort of I think the I'll show me, or you show me, I'll show you stuff. So let's hear it.
I show you I show you
So what am I doing to that to get it to sound like that? Well, first is you want to record it in a way where you're kind of yelling. It's got to feel like a gang, right? And then what do we have on it? Same stuff I normally do. It's like EQ, compression. Each one is going to be different a little bit. And then we have a big reverb on it. And so let's hear what this sounds like with nothing. Mm.
I show you I show you
You know, that big reverb makes it feel like you're in this like big space and makes it just feel bigger. So that's kind of like, that's just good, you know, good vocal production. And then paired with the right effects, you get this like gang vocal sound. Let's hear what these are doing at the end.
You gave me the best of me so you gave you the best of you
Again, feels really big, but these are actually they're fairly quiet in context of everything, but then you feel them. And then finally we have Adora's backgrounds. Let's just solo those. She has such a pretty voice. I love her voice. And let's hear what she's doing in this end gang part.
You gave me the best of me so you gave you the best of you
Love that. Sounds really good. Now, there's one other thing that, if I can find it here, is worth showing, which was an effect that I really loved. It was on I want to say it was on the pre. Yeah, this pre right here with Jimin. I'm doing a throw, and let me just show you what that throw is doing. Yeah, so just for this vocal, you'll hear a very interesting delay. And so let me solo it. And this was prior to releasing my plugin, the Sauce. So normally I would use the Sauce, but in this case, I'm using Little Altar Boy. And let me sort of play it, and then I will mute that, and then we'll sort of add it. We'll add it in halfway through. So here.
그 문을 열고 들어가면 이곳이 기다릴 거야 믿어도 괜찮아 널 위로해줄 magic show
So you hear this like high frequency echo effect, and I really love that. For some reason, I tried it, and it was almost like an accident. I was like, oh, that kind of adds a cool effect to it. So I'll play that in context, but that's basically just pitching the delay up, format shifting it down, and then adding a bunch of reverb to it. So let's hear that section one more time.
너의 맘속에 닿아 그 문을 열고 들어가면 이곳이 기다릴 거야 믿어도 괜찮아 널 위로해줄 magic show
So it got louder towards the end because I wanted to turn it up just so you could hear it. Yeah, I mean, I just thought that was a really cool effect. So I think that's probably everything, and that's really the whole song. And then let's just see what I was doing on the output. You know, I've got some, you know, a limiter on it, and I also have, oh, actually, I don't think I was using the ozone, but I often will use ozone, but I'm not going to use it this time. And what else do I have? Oh, turn the ozone off. Yeah, so I'm using some basic bus compression. So that's giving a little bit of compression there. And then I also have this saturation tool. It's a black box that adds just a little bit of grit, just to make the song feel like a little more energetic. It's subtle. It's very subtle. The mix is quite low, but let's hear what that's doing. Actually, let me take everything off, and then I'll add it all, and you can hear what everything's doing. And of course, once everything's on, my computer wants to choke up. Yeah, that just helps bring everything up to level. It's kind of like my little quick mastering job. And that's sort of the final process before it goes to mastering. Although when I do print a song and get it ready for mastering, I take the limiter off. I want to give the mastering engineer room to work. And so if I make it loud and compressed, they don't really have much to do. So I will leave these two elements on and then take the limiter off. So that is Magic Shop. You know, really, really big song, lots of sounds, lots of complexity. But when it's all put together, you know, it sounds really good. There's actually one more sound that I didn't really address, these toms, and let's just hear what they were. Yeah, so this was just like a tom fill that I added at the end there. There's a couple little sounds. Here's the first one. Here's the second one. And then I've got the drum break doing something as well. So pretty simple. That's just like a nice little pickup into that final chorus. But anyways, that is Magic Shop. Amazing song. I loved working on it, on the mix and co-writing it. And yeah, it's just one of my favorite BTS songs. And I'm not sure, I could be wrong, but you guys can you know, leave a note in the comments. I think this was the first BTS song that Jungkook produced himself. I could be wrong about that, but I know he produced it and he did a fantastic job. And all the guys sounded great on it. So so good job to them. And yeah, one of my favorite BTS songs. So that is it. That's In the Mix. I am DJ Swivel. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the comment box below, and I will see you next time. Peace.